Well, first of all, what I remember too is that like certain bands that I would be quote unquote really big on. If someone said to me, what are your favorite bands? Some of the ones I would have listed back then in the 80s, and I would be wearing t-shirts of bands, metal bands where I didn't even know any of the songs. But if I knew that that's what like my friends or the cool kids were into, or if that was it, like this is the band right now, this is the metal band, this is the glam band that everyone's into, that was it. And I truthfully may not have even have ever heard them or known a song from them, but I was going with it. And I remember one day walking around with my brother, who was 3 years older, and my cousin, who was also 3 years older, and they were talking about Bruce Springsteen, and Born in the USA had just come out. So I think it was roughly around 84, I'm not sure. And I said, do you like Springsteen? And I just remember like saying some stupid, preteen or young teen like comments like, no, he's lame, or he's,
Yeah.
this or that. And I wouldn't even have known him if he passed me on the street. I may not have ever heard any of his songs, but it wasn't in that, Quiet Riot, Poison, Cinderella, and those are still great bands. I still have my '80s tracks, that I playlist that I really like and am into. Man, no, it was, I mean, look, kids at that age, you're not the most secure beings.
Sure.
You're gonna go with the pack, and my pack at that point. And look, when you think about Springsteen and his music and the things that really draw people in more and more over the years, and you and me and gazillions of others, is his music is deep and it speaks to you and it's philosophical and it's poetic and it's about real issues and real life. And let's face it, what 10, 11, 13, 14-year-old kid even has the capacity to listen to a song like The River and have any sense of what this guy's even rambling about? you know
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. Joining me today is someone who's playing hurt. My guest is telling me he should be on injured reserve, but he cannot miss a chance to talk about Bruce Springsteen. Drew, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, man, that is the truth, brother. I jacked my back a couple days ago. I was supposed to be on a flight yesterday to Houston, Texas for an appearance on Great Day Houston to promote my new book, the brand, and obviously that's a big opportunity. And my back has been so jacked I could not move or travel. And then they said, all right, so you're not going to be able to do the podcast either, are you? And I said, the Springsteen one? I said, no, we're doing that. I said, I'll get there. So I hobbled in on a cane. My sound went out again, Cam, my audio.
At this point, Drew and I had a little technical difficulty. If you want to hear the unedited, ugly version of us trying to work throughout that, check out the Patreon.
Good. Perfect. All right. We're
All right.
back with Jesse Jackson,
Yay.
not the guy
Yes,
running for
indeed.
political office.
Exactly. I look different than I do on TV.
Don't
Um,
get confused, people.
yeah, exactly. Hey, Drew, welcome so much for on the show. I appreciate you playing Hurt. Why don't you tell my audience a little about yourself?
Man, that is a hard thing to do because I'm
A
just
loaded
a
question?
I'm a work in progress, and then some. But well, the most important thing probably for your audience is that I grew up in the great nation of New Jersey. I
Okay.
was actually born in Freehold,
All right.
for sure. And oddly enough, did not become a Springsteen fan until later in my 20s, mid 20s ish. And then probably by the time I was 30, I went full hardcore fanatic. But yeah, then this is fun for me. I've been doing a ton of podcasts and media across the country to promote my new book, Under My Skin, and our brand Derm Dude. And I
Mhm.
will say that when the opportunity came up to do a Springsteen podcast, that was it, man. That was the coolest thing to be able to talk to another Springsteen fanatic and just riff, man. So I'm pumped to be here,
Well,
Jesse.
I am so glad. And what was great, Drew, right, is I get um, an email from your PR firm, the PR people. And I was like, I replied, you had me at he's a Springsteen fan. Like that's that is great. All right. I always like to start at the beginning, Drew. So you said you grew up in Freehold. What kind of
I
music
was
was your
born in Freehold, but I grew up in Central Jersey. Just
okay. No,
exit 120 for all the Jerseyites out there.
very nice. So what kind of music did your family listen to?
My family then was the records playing in the house on the weekends that my parents would play would be Neil Diamond and ABBA and the Village People and the Oak Ridge Boys and kind of that range, Johnny Cash.
Okay.
My dad was a 70s guy and 60s, 70s.
Hmm.
But for myself, I was born in 72. So really the 80s was kind of my growing up window. And in New Jersey, the 80s, man, it was metal.
Sure.
We were mullets and metal and, Metallica. And, I remember in the fifth grade, the name of our kickball team was the Quiet Riots. And, the Quiet Riots would square off against the Def Leopards. And it was all hair bands then and glam after the metal. And, I used to play drums in like a garage band and you'd see ads for drummers or guitar players. And I always remember this. The ads would always start out with must have great hair. And then it would go into like the musical requirements. But literally it would start out no great hair don't apply for this band.
So early foreshadowing for your career now with skincare and hair care. Yes.
To a degree maybe,
Yeah.
but I think
Yeah.
it was a different world, man. But
Yeah.
kids walking around in school with notebooks that said disco sucks, and
Right.
it was just as much about what you didn't like, establishing what you didn't like, and what you weren't a part of, as trying to find what you did like or what you were a part of.
Is that do you think that's part of the reason why you didn't embrace Springsteen's music because that was old people's music or, the next generation and you were too quote unquote cool to be listening to that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't remember Springsteen at all coming up until a certain point. I remember specifically, well, first of all, what I remember too is that like certain bands that I would be quote unquote really big on. If someone said to me, what are your favorite bands? Some of the ones I would have listed back then in the 80s, and I would be wearing t-shirts of bands, metal bands where I didn't even know any of the songs. But if I knew that that's what like my friends or the cool kids were into, or if that was it, like this is the band right now, this is the metal band, this is the glam band that everyone's into, that was it. And I truthfully may not have even have ever heard them or known a song from them, but I was going with it. And I remember one day walking around with my brother, who was 3 years older, and my cousin, who was also 3 years older, and they were talking about Bruce Springsteen, and Born in the USA had just come out. So I think it was roughly around 84. I'm not sure.
Right.
And I said, do you like Springsteen? And I just remember like saying some stupid, preteen or young teen like comments like, no, he's lame, or he's,
Yeah.
this or that. And I wouldn't even have known him if he passed me on the street. I may not have ever heard any of his songs, but it wasn't in that, Quiet Riot, Poison, Cinderella, and those are still great bands. I still have my '80s tracks, that I playlist that I really like and I'm into.
Yeah.
But man, no, it was, I mean, look, kids at that age, you're not the most secure beings.
Sure.
You're gonna go with the pack, and my pack at that point. And look, when you think about Springsteen and his music and the things that really draw people in more and more over the years, and you and me and gazillions of others, is his music is deep and it speaks to you and it's philosophical and it's poetic and it's about real issues and real life. And let's face it, what 10, 11, 13, 14-year-old kid even has the capacity to listen to a song like The River and have any sense of what this guy's even rambling about? you know
Drew, I'm always surprised when I always think that you have to have your heart broken for a few times or have been in a relationship for a long time to get Tunnel of Love and that album. And every once in a while, I will have a 19-year-old that will join me on the podcast that talk about, Tunnel of Love's my favorite album. And I'm just like, man, you have some depth, right?
yeah.
Uh, do you remember when he it first became aware to you that you did embrace it, and what about his music spoke to you at that point in your life?
I was in my almost my mid 20s, so right about that age, and I was driving
Okay.
across country. I was kind of in a transition. College had ended. The real world work had started, stopped. It wasn't, yeah, which is normal. I mean, a lot of people
Sure.
don't graduate from college and just walk into their career and off you go. I mean, it's a process, but you don't really know how to deal with that when it hits you. So one of my ways of dealing was moving a lot.
Okay.
I would go from New Jersey back out to Arizona, where I went to college, and back to New Jersey, and kind of had a reason several times to drive across country, and at least it ate up 5 or 6 days of time of thinking on the open road. And I that's there was no satellite radio, there were no books on tape, there were none of that. I mean, you had limited radio, and you're driving by yourself these crazy long distances and hours. And it kind of hit me, some of the repeat songs that I all of a sudden found myself digging and really getting into. And I was like, man, and I remember one of them being like Out in the Streets, and Born to Run, and just certain songs that when I was on the freeway just driving and highway driving across country. And then I think there was one road trip where at the very beginning of the trip, I was kind of like, all right, this is cool. I'm going to try to tap into that Springsteen guy's stations. I wonder how I find his songs, and maybe even bought a cassette at the beginning. And I think 6, 7 days later, when I got to the other side of the country where I was going, I was like full fledged stopping at stores along the way to see if I can get more Springsteen cassettes for the car.
That's greatness. That's awesome. Um, do you, what about it spoke to you? Why do you think at that point in your life it was something that you wanted to hear and that it did touch part of you? What about it did it touch?
There's a lightness to it. Some of the stuff's pretty heavy, but when
Sure.
I mean like a lightness, I think if you think of like a song like 10th Avenue Freeze Out,
Yeah.
I had never been exposed to that type of musical arrangement before, which was rock and roll, but yet there was the piano, not just a synth, but like real piano and real horns, but in a cool badass rock and roll way, like the way that horn was blowing, the way clarence would blast it, the way the professor would just wail on those piano keys. And then you still had Bruce just diving all over the stage. The guy was a maniac, sliding across the stage, jumping off the piano, crowd surfing. So this was badass rock and roll. This was not your parents' rock and roll. This was not 50s, 60s rock and roll. This was like really cool. And yet again, I think the majority of music I'd listened to had four members of a band typically. You had a bass player, a guitar player, a drummer, and a singer. And a lot of times a singer was like a David Lee Roth who, didn't play anything.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and again, I'm not knocking Van Halen. Van Halen's epic, but
Right.
that was the world that, that I had grown up in. All of a sudden, here's like all these musicians all contributing. You can really almost hear each one of them, looking at, Max Weinberg, this dude wearing his vest and his like Broadway orchestra type outfit, who, as a very bad, not great drummer myself, messing around in a few garage bands, like you just couldn't deny that if anyone said, who is a drummer that you would want to be or emulate or whatever, I was afraid to say Max Weinberg because I couldn't even figure out what the dude was doing. I mean, I would like watch his hands and I'd be like, what the hell did he just do? I mean,
Yeah.
it was like Neil Peart levels,
Hmm.
um, it was just crazy. So on every level, there was just nothing that didn't blow my mind. And then as you're, listening to each song, it was like I had never heard 10, 12-minute songs before, man. It was still the
Right.
generation of 3.5-minute songs, two or three different, riffs and, the same chorus and a bridge and boom, out 3.5 minutes. And,
Yeah.
this dude was going on for, 12 minutes plus. And then halfway through the song, he was like talking through the crowd and having a real deep conversation and talking about, for me, places I'd been, places that I knew, things I was familiar. I mean, he's talking all about Asbury Park. I mean, my prom was in Asbury Park.
Sure.
This is my world. So it was very much like he was talking to me. And then the fact that it wasn't like, again, growing up, if you all of a sudden you'd hear, I used the example before, Quiet Riot, come on, feel the noise.
Right.
Well, that's great. Would they have like one album? Maybe they came out with a second album, two or three songs you could get into. Cinderella, Brittany Fox, I forget some of the bands, and
Yeah.
these bands had some cool tunes. And again, they'll come up on my playlist today, and I'll feel good vibing to it and remembering it, and like, man, I remember that good feelings. But this freaking guy, Springsteen, had this catalog of 300 plus songs back then, endless albums. Each one was like a story, an opera, a play, theatrical, and it just kept growing and growing. I'm like, this is like the endless pit of unbelievable music vault of everything. There are happy songs, sad songs, love songs, falling in love, breaking up, working, father son dynamics, which really spoke to me. I talk about that a lot in the book, about a very similar dynamic path in my own life with my own
Hmm.
father that was very, I don't know what the word would even be, but a little freaky, actually, of some of the things that Springsteen would speak through. And there are no musicians who spoke about that. I mean, again, back then, I mean, what you would see is the musicians, how many girls you can bring backstage afterwards. And that was cool. That was great. I love those guys. And, then all of a sudden you're hearing someone who's like sharing with you their deepest, darkest, vulnerabilities and fears and joys and celebrations and heartbreaks. And I guess it's pretty fucking different and pretty cool,
One of the things that I, you remind me of is I graduated high school in 1977. And so, um, didn't brag a lot about, loving Barry Manilow because I was a top 40 kid. So all my buddies were into Kiss. So, got my Kiss Alive, Kiss Destroyer, and did enjoy the music. Um, and what was me in 1977, I stumbled on the Beach Boys 8-track Endless Summer, which was kind of, a collection of their hits.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing, I went, oh my goodness, I've never heard harmony like this. I've never heard that imagery on that. The other thought you talk about how small, the four bands, right? Garage band. I remember just, last year when they brought out they recut the No Nukes concert, right? So
Yeah,
they
yeah,
show
yeah,
them,
yeah.
and that was great. But I was like, God, it looks like so few people, because now then, you have you have Niels, you have Steven, you have Susie, you have Patty, and back then it was like, God, it seems such a small band, but actually, even then, it was a big band compared to a lot of other people.
It was crazy. And you would see,
Yeah,
footage of him and Southside Johnny and when Stevie was with Johnny and
yeah,
all of that. And you hear a lot of the similarities there, like in the orchestral arrangement, and you can see where the roots were from and everything. And it's just,
yeah,
again, I think, look, I'm not into Springsteen because I'm from New Jersey. That just made it kind of more of bragging rights. Once I
right.
realized, I don't even think I was probably pretty far into drinking the Kool-Aid and hooked when all of a sudden, then I was like, oh, he's from New Jersey. Wait, he's from Freehold? I remember my
Mhm.
parents telling me I was born in Freehold,
Yeah,
and then kind of making the connection, and all of a sudden it becomes, like bragging rights. And then you also start to really dive in deeper to some of the lyrics, and you're like, I get it, man. The mills, the factories, Main Street, the stuff he's singing about,
yeah.
man. I've driven through there. I grew up there. Those are my neighbors.
So I always like to preface this, Drew, with the amount of times you've seen Bruce perform live is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are. There are plenty of people who, because of where they live, they've seen him hundreds of times. There are huge fans that, because of circumstances, age, have never seen him live. But have you counted how many times you've seen him live?
Not religiously, but I
Okay.
when I've gone back and did like the top ballpark, I guess it's between 25 and 30.
Okay.
And I remember like some of the ones that, I mean, they all could stand out if I really sat down and put pen to paper. But what'll happen is when I start to do that, then I'll hit a certain show and a certain memory and a group of people I was with, and I'll just drift into that, and
We end up, yes, I
happy
do know
land.
that feeling. Yes, absolutely. Um, Memories of shows that stand out. You just mentioned that, you start thinking about a couple of stories you want to share of that.
One of the coolest ones by far, and it probably was, hard to beat, is I went to Kilkenny, Ireland.
Ooh,
It
yeah.
was in 2013, and the way I got there was pretty fascinating. To make a long story short, I'd been vacationing in Mexico, and bumping into a guy at the pool in Mexico who was from the UK vacationing, and made a quick connection that we were both Springsteen fans. And someone said to him, oh, Drew's a huge Springsteen fan. And the guy's like, how many shows have you seen? I said, well, I've seen about, I think 10 or 12. And I've gone across the country to see him in a few different places. I'm like, how many have you seen? The guy's like, oh, about 150. I'm like, and then the guy's like, which European shows have you seen? I'm like, well, Europe? No, I'm from America. I live in
Yeah,
LA now. It's from New Jersey. He's like, if you've never been to Europe, you've never seen, I'm like, what? And that was where he explained to me that how the Europeans just are insane about, and it's a night and day different audience, and not one's not better than the other, but the
right.
European crowds are generally younger, larger, wide open stadiums. I mean, it's just absolutely mind blowing. And so we became buddies during this vacation in Mexico that we were both there with our families. And he had said to me, well, there's a show coming in Kilkenny, Ireland, and I'm going to go with a couple of my other buddies. They're diehard Springsteen fans. This is my buddy Sam, and he said I'm going to meet up with my buddy Jesse and my buddy Malcolm, and between us, we've seen 300 and something shows. You should come meet us in Ireland. And I
Hmm.
said, I'm going to do that. Great. And I remember a few months later where everyone said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Ireland to see a Springsteen show. And they're going, oh, who are you going to go with? Oh, I met a guy in a pool in Mexico, and he invited me to meet his buddies over in Ireland. And we're going to go to, and it sounds like the thing that you'll see on a newsreel of stupid idiot gets abducted and killed
Yes,
and meets
like,
a guy in
yeah,
Mexico and
I,
says, let's go to a Springsteen concert in Ireland.
you're being
And
catfished, right?
yeah, right. And these guys, like to this day, I mean, we're on WhatsApp right now planning the new tour.
Yeah.
I'm going to be meeting up with them in Sweden for the 2023 in June. I'm going to be seeing them in Sweden, and they'll be doing the whole European leg. And it created a whole new relationship with this group. They've come out to the US and we did shows together in LA, and it became a great group that we really connected and bonded through Springsteen, but in so many other ways. We know each other's family and lives, and have a blast over it. So yeah, so that was pretty incredible. Going to Kilkenny, I learned the concept of queuing, which I had no idea what that was. So in the US, you get in when you get in, you go to the
Yeah.
front if you can, you push your way to the front, you do
Right.
whatever. In Europe, people get there and they set up the fan club, and the earlier you camp out or queue, is the higher up you are as far as getting closer to the stage. And they do this roll call where they put numbers on your hand and they come and do count every 4 or 6 hours. So I think for Kilkenny, we were on and off waiting in line for a day and a half, outside, and that was a beautiful thing, man. There was like 1,000 people, and you could go home and sleep for a few hours, but if you don't come back for roll call, you're out. And then we went in, and I think 2 people from the stage, which you might as well be there. I mean, there's no difference. I'm pretty tall. I'm 6'4".
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's not much room between me and the front row. I could see it all, and I have this big massive American flag draped over my body with a big sign that says I'm from Freehold, New Jersey, and in Ireland. And I'm telling you, man, Bruce just like boom, boom, like pointing at me the whole time. And
oh, that is awesome.
60 minutes, ended up doing a story. It happens to be at that show. I didn't realize they were filming a story. And like a few months later, I was flipping the channels and saw 60 Minutes doing a story about Springsteen and the phenomenon. And I'm watching the story, and 20 minutes into the story, the 60-minute reporter goes, this boss crazy fan even stalked him halfway around the world in Kilkenny, Ireland. And they cut to a shot of me with the American flag and my sign that says I'm from Freehold, New Jersey. And I'm like, well, it's kind of true, I guess. But so that show was pretty spectacular on every level. I mean, the Irish are just, Kilkenny, I think, is a town of 15,000 year-round residents. And the show held 30,000 people in their cricket stadium. So we doubled the size of the town for the concert. That was one of them. I mean, I've never had a not amazing show, but you always have some that just for different reasons are, he always does, his thing. I don't know that he has ever made one show better than the other, because he has never not blown away at anything you can imagine. It's more a matter of what's the arena, the stadium, who are you with, those types of things. But I've never not had an incredible experience.
Yeah, there's been discussion that as they get older, how long can they keep doing the shows that are 3 hours plus 3.5, 4 hours? And many of us have talked about that, yes, every once in a while we'll bring up it was a long show, but usually that's after the fact. You talk about, oh, I can't believe he did this song, or, I was with this group of people and we were, we bonded before the show. I did have one fun story for you, Drew. Terry Smith, who is a fellow podcaster, he and I were talking about the ticket and, all the drama of that. And he was explaining, similar to you, about some of the European. And he said on one tour, about halfway through the show, the guy he was standing next to said, okay, I'll see you. And he said, where are you going? Well, I'm going to queue for tomorrow night's show. And Terry's like, I think you're missing the point, right? Just
Yeah.
That's a
I almost told you that. I almost told you that same story. It's so funny that when I was in Kilkenny,
yes,
and I mean, I don't mean to be judgmental. I think this is a little strange. I'll be honest. Is that he was doing album shows, where the artist comes out and says, tonight we're going to do, The River, or tonight we're going to do,
Greetings, or whatever. Yeah,
Born to Run, or Nebraska. And so he was doing, I think, 2 shows in Kilkenny. And there was an American guy and an Italian woman, boyfriend, girlfriend, who were right next to us. They've been queuing the whole time with us. And we get in, and Bruce comes out, and he's hello, 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 does his thing. And he says he's going to do the Born in the USA album.
Yeah.
And you know, for I don't know, for the people who aren't, I guess, diehards or whatever.
Yeah,
Uh, so there tends to be some people who think of that album as a commercial album or
right.
whatever. Think what you want. I still love some of the songs from that as much as any of them, but literally,
Absolutely.
I kid you not, the boyfriend and girlfriend with us to our left, to our right, they've been queuing for a day and a half. Literally shrugged their shoulders and said, "All right, let's go queue." And maybe tomorrow he'll do, Born to Run or something else. And they did not even stay for the first song to go queue again. And my buddies from Europe had to explain to me, I'm like, what's, and like, well, they don't want to hear Born to Run, Born in the USA. They want to, like, they almost had a sympathetic sense to it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is the stupidest fucking thing I have ever heard. That is like,
Thank you for saying that. I agree. It and I talk a lot about this in regular life, and Better Days is one of my favorite song of his.
love it,
And
love it.
and the idea, right, is that too many people worry about what's next. If this happens, then I'll be happy.
Yeah,
If I once I get the kids out of diaper, I'll enjoy being a parent. Once I get a raise, then I'll enjoy. And the idea is enjoy the journey. These are
yeah,
the better days. And the
yeah.
idea of too many people, and especially on vacation, are worrying about what they're not doing instead of enjoying what they're doing. Like, oh, yeah, there's that ride over at Disney World, instead of enjoying where I'm at this point.
Yeah.
And it's just great. All
Well,
right.
some people have the
Yeah.
mindset too that they have to be more diehard than the next person, and it's funny. I don't really use the word diehard. I'm nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't
Yeah.
just fit my mindset. As far as I'm a big fan. I even
Yeah.
joke and say a fanatic. I'm a fan. But some people will bring in anything an intensity to something, and they need it to almost be more exclusive. Like
Yes.
they care more than you do. And I remember I knew someone, a while ago, and I love the Dave Matthews Band. I'm a fan of theirs, not nearly as much as I'm of Springsteen, but I remember this person who was a diehard Dave Matthews fan and was saying, "Oh yeah, what are some of your favorite songs?" "Oh, none of the ones you would know. I'm not into any of the popular songs." And I just remember thinking, like, that is such a deliberate effect to refer to yourself as a diehard, but that I wouldn't know any of the songs you like because they're none of the popular ones that you hear played on the, whatever, that you only like the stuff that is just so off the charts deep. And I mean, look, there's certain songs that I like. For you mentioned Better Days, which I love. That song has, we all make our own interpretation of it. For me, it's about starting over again, new relationships. I got a pretty red rose and a new set of clothes, a
I
woman I
think
can
that's a
call my
very
friend.
valid. Yeah. I think that's a
But
very valid
I
evaluation.
love the song, long time coming around. I mean,
Yeah.
and how many people will you ever say, what's your Springsteen favorite song? And not a lot of people are going to think, oh, long time coming around, but it either speaks to you or whatever. But I don't think that, I'm a diehard fan because I like a song that most people don't, think of in their top 20. It's whatever works for you. But or I'm going to leave the concert before he sings a song because I don't want to hear Born in the USA. I mean, how could you not love Born in the USA? I mean, you could say I like so many other things differently. I like other things more. Certain things may have been deeper to me at that time, but how do you not still appreciate and love what that album meant and did for his career, for everyone who still enjoys his music, and it gave him that platform and opportunity. And some of the songs are incredible and so deep. I mean, it's like saying, what's your favorite album? It's like saying, who's your favorite child of all your
Yeah.
kids? I mean, and then judging them. Oh, right. No, you don't think you should enjoy, that child more than that? I mean, you love them all,
Yeah, I'd say that Born in the USA is a gateway album for a lot of people. And I'm sure that there are things where um, you overhear it. You've heard it so many other times. But and I'm sure I also think that there are people, like I had a guest on a few months ago that we were talking about things, and she said, I really have had, I've heard Born to Run live enough. And so I always would wish he would do a different song because I've heard Born to Run a lot. And I said, here's my counter argument. Someone in that arena, this is their first Bruce Springsteen show. Every show is someone's first show. And think about the first time you went to see Bruce. If you had not heard Born to Run live, how would you have felt? And she stopped and she says, I will never feel that way again. And when he plays Born to Run, I'm going to smile and I'm going to scream out of happiness because I know somewhere there is a first-time attendee losing their S
Good for you.
because
Bruce
they're getting
shamed
it.
her in a good way. You Bruce shamed her the right way. Good for
Yeah.
you, Jesse.
Yeah.
But also, like, think in terms of this. Like, for me, I think in terms of, you look at a recorded live performance of Born to Run from the 80s or even 90s,
Yeah.
and look at it now. I mean, it's really kind of cool to see, a 70-year-old Bruce versus a 50-year-old, and the performance and the
Yeah.
differences. Or live on Broadway when he did the acoustic version to end the show was one of the most incredible arrangements of Born to Run imaginable,
Yeah.
which is night and day difference. So there's so much different ways to look at it that
I was a casual fan of Independence Day. Like, it's okay.
yeah.
But on the River Tour, the remastered River Tour, seeing a late 60s guy singing a song that he's now seeing at the perspective from the father, and he wrote it from this perspective of the son, made me love that song even more.
Yeah.
Right? It just all of a sudden it went to a different level because I'm seeing that. And I do think it's been as we continue this journey with him, seeing a different stuff. I do have to talk to you a little bit. I'm loving the Bruce talk, but I do want to give you a little bit. Talk a little bit about the book and talk a little bit about your new company, or not necessarily new, but the company you guys are starting and working.
In some ways, they kind of it's like a river leading into the other, I guess, or into the outflow. But for 15, 20 years, I my world was celebrity skincare lines in Hollywood, directing, producing, own an agency that was doing, a lot of the brands that people watching or listening right now would be familiar with. So skincare, hair care, most of it was targeted towards women. That's where the majority of personal care and beauty products have been marketed towards over the years.
Yeah.
And over 15, 20 years, several things grew within me. One was my tattoo habit or my tattoo passion, and adding more and more tattoos. And my tattoos are very enigmatic, symbolic. They have a lot of deep meaning to me. And then separately, I really had a passion to start my own business. We had, knock on wood, had quite a bit of success. We did about $1.5 billion in sales of other people's products for other brands. And it was just burning inside of me what was going to be, my own business, my own thing to, never have to answer to anyone or have any rules of any kind again, And so Derm Dude was born about 1.5 years ago, and primarily started out for tattoo skincare for things that I was looking for. Then we evolved to beard, and then we added our ball line, products for men's grooming, which I mean, quite frankly, has been huge, no pun intended. And our ball line just blew up, and I went on TikTok and I spoke about it for 30 seconds, and it's got almost 6 million views already. And it's just been this crazy thing that went viral. And our biggest product, most successful, it's called Happy Sack Nut Love Cooling Cream, and we can't stock enough.
Say that
this.
Again, please.
Happy Sack Nut Love Cooling Cream. and then we also have our Amaze Balls ball spray. This is our candy cane, so you can spray your balls and deodorize and smell like candy cane. And this is our best-selling ball wash. It's called Ballgasmic, which is an activated charcoal body wash. So, again, I came from the world of personal skincare, beauty, health products for 20 years. So starting a line for men, it flowed so naturally. And then, what to call it? Well, derm, skin, and dude. I wanted it to be what I am, who I am. This guy from New Jersey who's covered in tattoos, has a beard, and, fortunately still has his balls after a few near misses over the years, So then I had been told for many years, you got to write a book. You've had a crazy, bizarre life, a lot of peaks and valleys and a lot of crazy things in between. And, I've said before, I think you have to be a bit narcissistic to think that a book about your own life would be interesting. So I really shied away from it. And I also didn't want to talk about certain things in my life that were, quite personal, things that I had never opened up or shared with anyone, even
Hmm.
people I was close with, some very tragic events, hard to grasp events, and other types of things I just never felt inclined to put out there to the world. But as I turned 50 and launched the Derm Dude brand and continued to get tattooed, I really looked at myself and was realizing that my own tattoos were my own life story coming to life on my body. And we came up with this concept of me writing a book about my own life journey, starting out in New Jersey as, somewhat troubled, confused kid, as I think many kids are, especially from New Jersey. And how did I end up in Hollywood directing, Jennifer Lopez and Paris Hilton and Cindy Crawford and all the things that I did. And, I was on death row twice. The book talks about that, explains it. I was, on the border of Kenya and Sudan and Ethiopia negotiating with villagers for the lives of babies a few years ago. I was in the Britney Spears documentary about her conservatorship. Like, all of these unusual things and many more were just kind of part of being me and what happens in my life by just living. So we decided that I would write a book, and each chapter features a different tattoo that tells a story about my life and is really not so much about me. We use me as a conduit in my tattoos, but it's motivational, it's mental health. We talk about suicide and the loss of a very, very close person to me. 3 of my 4 children have had near death experiences from medical issues.
Hmm.
Business wise, I've made many millions, lost many millions, made some of them back, and I'm sure I'll make more and lose it and get it back again. And that's just part of the roller coaster of my life that I'm good with. And I ride the ride, and my body explains that. And then, it leads up to, launching Derm Dude, a whole new brand at the age of 50, and leaving that whole Hollywood world behind and saying, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to do this my way. And that's what we've done. And, we're doing, like, you go on our website and people say, I've never seen anything like this. And then, there's not a lot of people who call their product Happy Sack Nut Love Cooling Cream, or, we have a new product that we just launched called Happy Crack. And, you spray it on your butt cheeks and it helps, eliminate moisture and adds a nice little smell back there. And, our slogan for that product is, Happy Crack. Some of our very best customers are really assholes. And and it's not just one liners. Just I can say the things that I always wanted to say and do and not really give 2 fucks, because I don't answer to anyone. I answer to our customers, and they're loving life. They're happy. They're buying everything we can make. So it worked out.
What I I can fill in the lines, but I'd rather you do. What made you think about um hygiene from a male perspective, especially from the areas that you're talking about? It's one thing to have a masculine hand cream or, a face to work on your things, but you're, talking about, um, your intimate areas,
Your
you've
balls,
got, yeah,
Jesse.
your
Your
balls.
balls. You can say
Yeah.
it, baby. It's
Yeah. Right there.
America. Your
We're
sack, your nut
yeah,
sack. Say it with me, Jesse. On 3. 1, 2, 3.
nut
Nut
sack.
sack.
There
All
you
right,
go.
you did it. Good
All
man.
right. So, um, what made you think of that? What drove that?
It was, the best part is it was not thinking about it and sitting down with a pad and paper or a
Yeah,
chalkboard and a bunch of MBA or marketing people. And we, I owned a creative agency, and the whole idea that we sat around with, what's the tone, what's the voice, what's the message? And the message, really starting out with tattoos and beard, was that our tattoos and our beards are who we are. They're part of who we are.
sure.
Our skin is the largest living organ in our body. Most people don't know that. A lot of guys think there's a different organ that is the biggest, but it is your skin is the largest
Yes.
living organ in your body, and your skin is alive, and your beard, even though the hairs are not alive, your face is alive, and your skin. And it was, I always liked storytelling, and what your beard says about you, what your tattoos say about you. And I was, again, turning 50 and realized that there were I'd spent 20 years very successful skincare brands. Some of these brands that we helped develop and run were doing $200-300 million a year with big celebrities attached, and yet all of a sudden I'm sitting there thinking, what do I put on my tattoos? What do I use for my skin? My beard is patchy, it's not growing, or I'm getting flaky and itchy like I used to. What do I do? And there was really nowhere to go. There was no answers, or it was a bunch of marketing fluff and BS. And coming from that world, I knew when it was BS and hype. And I
Right.
know when you walk into Target or go on Amazon and you see the same bottle that they've been selling for years, but they slap the name for men on it and say, well, then now
Hmm.
it's for men.
Yeah.
And I could look at the ingredients and knew that it was BS, because this is what I had done for 20 years with all these other brands. So I'd work with the top chemists and formulators and dermatologists around the world on so many different skincare and personal care and beauty brands. So I really did see a gap. It wasn't that nobody was selling products for tattoos or your beards. I did not see anyone or any brands that were doing it authentically, that were doing it from the perspective of what do guys like me really want, need, deserve, versus what's the quickest way to make a dollar. And it was appealing to me because it gave me the opportunity to walk away from that Hollywood world that I had been in, that I was so done with for so long, of, fluff and BS and over the top marketing and trying to make a 60-year-old woman look 30,
Right.
or try to make a 60-year-old guy 30. It's not even a man or a woman thing.
Yeah.
It's just, I didn't want to do that. It was, how do you feel good in your own skin? How do you, be the best person you are and feel good about yourself? And so that's where we started with beard and tattoos. And then, quite frankly, it was a natural evolution to balls. It was a category that very few people were speaking about. It had always been a stigma, taboo. Women take care of those areas, down below, their whole life. It's a wide open thing. And for guys, it's so silly. It's like, oh yeah, just jump in the shower and you'll be fine. But
Maybe
it
throw a
doesn't,
little baby powder down there, right? Like you
which
pull up
which
your
I would
thing.
tell you not to do. But yeah,
Yes. No, I'm just saying that, right? You're like, yeah,
yeah.
right.
But and then people say, well, why ball wash? Why not just use soap? And I would say, well, look at the research. Why do you use toothpaste and a toothbrush when you brush your teeth? Why not just take a bite of soap? You
Right.
use toothpaste and a toothbrush because your mouth is different from the rest of your body. The temperature, the cells, the the whole science of what happens inside your mouth, the temperature. Your balls are the same way. Your ball sack is the most sensitive part of our body. It's housing our most sensitive testicles,
Right.
and at a certain temperature, and it's all day long being held in by underwear and pants, and it's not getting exposed to fresh air and sweat and heat and everything else. And why do we think that does not need special care, or shouldn't have products made specifically for the ball area, so that when you come home at the end of the day and you want to be with your girlfriend or your wife or your partner, or I always say, if you want to be with a group of 7 people, as long as you're adults and mutually consenting, good for you. But it's just one of those things that there's a stigma, and I love knocking it down. I think that by having a funny tone, by being a bit irreverent, which is who we are, by being real, by being authentic with people, and the biggest comment people make is, holy shit, I can't believe how good these products are. Wow, these are real products. These formulas are incredible. I thought this was just some funny brand, and I ordered it as a and then they look on the website and they read about me and my background. They're like, this guy was in skincare for 20 years. This guy worked with all of these, dermatologists and labs, and this guy actually has an idea of what he's doing. And I say, yeah, we spent over a year formulating every single product, testing them, not just in labs, but on myself, on anybody I knew. And we went over and over, and every single product we put out, we probably go through 50, 60, sometimes 80 different versions until we get it 100% right, or we don't launch it. And we didn't launch with the idea of launching a one-off hit SKU. We said, hey man, we're building a business, we're building a brand. And I didn't really look at the numbers that early on. I really didn't. I was like, I'm in this for the long haul. And um all of a sudden, a month or two in, we started to sell more and more and more, and word started to get out there. And then TikTok took off, and we went viral, and brand blew up and we were on the media and everything. And, that's all well and good. But everybody said, man, when did you get excited and all that? And I said, I've been excited since the day we came up with the concept. I knew this was it. It's just a matter of, what's the road like from here on. But it was never we're going to try this, or it was this is it, man. We're in this.
Drew, what do you think it's social media? TikTok is kind of what got you guys to the next level? Word of mouth? What do you think has been one of the keys to your success?
Both of those things. I mean, word of mouth is huge on any level, and that leads to it. We've had a lot of people, unpaid influencers, I guess you would call them, or people, speaking very highly of the brand, of the product. So we've gotten,
Yeah.
when your reviews are like 5-star, 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 and people are just raving about you, that, is a wonderful thing. Social media for sure. TikTok has probably been our surprisingly biggest channel, because I didn't even know how to use it until my twin 6-year-olds showed me how. And then obviously Instagram and Facebook are staples. So those are the three main. And then we started to do some small paid advertising and some sponsorships and things. But generally, I mean, I see us as a startup. We've done a lot of media appearances. The book has gotten a lot of attention. We just launched it a few weeks ago, and I was on NBC Miami and a variety of different shows, and we're in Men's Health coming up. And none of these are placements that we paid for. Just people coming to us saying, hey, what's happening with this brand? We're seeing it, we're hearing it, people are raving about it. And I don't really see it as selling a product. We're really a community, a voice where we inform. My favorite thing is when people write in and say, I love what you're talking about. I love that you're talking about the proper way, to wash your balls. We have women writing in saying, I got this for my husband and it's improved our relationship. I have women writing in saying, I raised my son alone. He's a teenager. He doesn't have a dad. And I showed him, some of your videos talking about how to take care of yourself. Thank you for that. It eased that barrier. I've had guys write in and say, I grew up without a dad, no one to really show me how to take care of myself and wash. And let's face it, when you're a guy growing up, being in the locker room with your buddies is not exactly the time to say, hey, how do I wash this thing down here to really make sure I get all this funk off the junk? Any tips, guys? I mean,
Yeah, no, it's not going to cover.
No,
Right.
that's a one-way
Yeah.
ticket to an ass kicking. So
Yes. That's cool. That's very cool.
yeah.
If someone wants to find out more about the products, best way to go to it. And then we're going to get back to Bruce
dermdude.com.
and man. Okay,
Yeah,
say again.
dermdude.com. So DERM, I think it's on the hat, hopefully.
Yes.
DERM, derm, as in derm skin, and then dude, DUDE.com. And that's got a ton of information. We have a place called the Man Cave on there with just our blog, and we tons of free information. If you want, you can check out our book on there. We do have our products, but just come hang out. You could link to our social media, or you can come find me in Dallas, February 10th. I'll be at the Springsteen concert, same as you, right?
Yes, we will. And we will have to try to figure out a way to meet before the show. And
I'm all up for that.
yeah, I am all for that. Yeah, looks like you guys are for the holiday season. I'm looking at the website now. There's different there's kits, there tattoo kits, bear kits, ball wash kits, hygiene kits. So looks like a lot of great things. It's a wonderful website, a lot of information. And Under My Skin, Bearing It All One Tattoo at a Time is the book. It is available on Amazon and everywhere. And also from this website, you can get it.
That's right.
Yeah, great stuff. That is wonderful. All right, back to Bruce. How many shows are you going to on this tour? Are you planning to attend, or?
Yeah, so far I'm committed to two. I'm committed
Okay.
to the one in Dallas and the one in Sweden, which I'm really looking forward to
Ooh,
because
that should
it's
be
been
fun.
Gothenburg has just been a lifelong dream, or
Okay.
to see Springsteen there. I've just heard it's epic. I think the thing that's a little bit challenging,
Yeah.
maybe they'll add more dates, But schedule wise, to go all the way to Europe and only catch one show is a bit you're like, I want to squeeze in another. And I think there's Munich on one end of it and
Yeah.
a second show in Gothenburg also, but the way it breaks up and the timing and my kids' birthdays back here in the States. So I think the way we're going to do it is instead of trying to be maniacal, if that's the right word, and get a second show in, I think we're going to do it where we do the one show that we're going to see with our crew with Sam and Malcolm and Jesse and their whole crew, the European Springsteen
Mhm.
crew. I think we're going to do that one show in Gothenburg and then take 5 or 6 days and enjoy the rest of Europe and go around
Well,
Sweden and really get to see a great country.
that'll be, why did you pick the Dallas show?
Well, two of my best friends, or my best friend in the U.S., one of them, a guy named Moody, lives there out in Dallas with his amazing wife Emily, and I have a whole like second family in Dallas,
Okay,
Texas, that is really like my
good.
tribe out there. And I wanted to bring my girlfriend out to see the show, and I kind of she's a Jersey girl, and
Okay.
which is kind of fun. And I took her to her first Springsteen show. I think she's a bit spoiled because I took her to Springsteen on Broadway, and we were in the second row. So I think her expectations might be a little bit high right now.
Yeah.
I think I have to explain that you're not always going to be 20 feet away from Bruce. Um,
So, what are your thoughts on the new covers album?
it goes back to the thing that we were talking about earlier where and I get it, everyone is so passionate and loves Bruce that you kind of want what you want and there's only so
Yeah.
much one human being can do. So in a perfect world, I think if I could, wave a wand and say would it have been original music, probably. But having said that, listening to it and really hearing it, it's I get it, man. It's really cool that he's doing like this whole soul. For me, it's funny. It's a cover album, but it's not really a cover album because these are not songs that I personally grew up with. They don't like roll off my tongue. So in many ways, if I didn't know they were a cover album, I could have been fooled. And it's just really kind of cool hearing him hit that genre. I don't think he did this album thinking this is going to be one that brings in new fans and sells out stadiums. He doesn't need to. He's doing that anyway. So I
Right.
think it rounds out his portfolio really nice. And again, he had the other was Letter to You was the name of the previous
Yeah.
album, right? Of all new music that he hasn't gotten to tour and support. So I think from that end of it, it does kind of make a lot of sense that um we hear you guys. Can you go from that end of it?
Yeah.
Um it's from that end of it, I think it makes a lot of sense that, having one album versus two of brand new material before you even toured and supported it. So I think
Yeah.
it'll be fun. I think it'll add a couple of cool tunes to it. I really do like Letter to You.
I was going to
I've heard
ask
it.
that next. Yeah.
I like it a lot. I think it's like one of those things, man. Just grows on you and grows on you, and you dip deeper in. There's probably 4, 5, 6 different songs on there that just really call to you. It's tough. I was thinking about it beforehand. And I was like, oh, I wonder if Jesse's going to ask for my favorite album. I better have an answer. And start to think, and I will start to stress about it. And I'm like, I'm not going to plan. I'm not going to prep because
Yeah.
I've been, enjoying and living the Springsteen vibe for 25 plus years. I'm like, I'm curious to see what comes out of my mouth if you ask me any
So
questions. And
that is the next question. Are there favorite albums or songs that you return to for certain things in your life? For example, um, Better Days, Land of Hope and Dreams are songs that when I feel like I need to be inspired, when I need to do, I will go to that. There'll be other songs I listen to when I feel like being sad. So are there songs? So I don't think of it as favorites, but just songs you return to because of either memories they invoke or, certain experiences in your life.
hands down, I mean, without a doubt. And that's why I'm less about favorite albums because some of those songs, most of them are over such a range of albums
Yes.
over his whole collection. I mean, I can pull a couple of songs from every single album itself. And then if I, go on Spotify or iTunes and do,
Yeah.
Springsteen live playlist or something,
Yeah.
it's over 30 years. But, some of the songs you already hit, Better Days is absolutely one of them. Long Time Coming is a incredible song. You mentioned Independence Day, that I write about Independence Day in the book. It had a, it very much played into my own relationship with my father. So it absolutely, um, and then, I mean, I think that you have your go-to feel-good songs,
Yeah.
Out on the Streets and Darkness on the Edge of Town and, She's the One and, so many different songs. I like Land of Hope and Dreams for sure,
Yeah.
especially the live versions.
Yeah.
I love that song, the arrangement, the different ways that he
Yeah.
does it. Cowboy Pete. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, it's pretty hard for me to turn on E Street Nation on Sirius and hear a Springsteen song that I'm like, it's just not going to do it for me.
That's
Uh,
hilarious. I did want to share. My son is did not grow up a Springsteen fan. And he went with me to the river tour up in Oklahoma City, and mostly just because he was like 28 at the time. Mostly excuse like, okay, dad's crazy about Bruce. Let's do a son and dad's trip, right? And on the way back, you could tell. In fact, what was I thought was really insightful is, the show's over and I'm like, hey, do you want to go get a drink? Do you want to go somewhere? And he's like, I'm just tired. I just want to go home. I'd go to the hotel. Okay. And so the next morning he asked a lot of questions. And then um, he and I flew to MetLife there in Jersey to see one of the arena shows. And Out in the Streets, one of his favorite songs. And he said, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. He says, I don't think there's a person who's working for a living that, whether you're the guy working in the mailroom, someone who's a blue collar worker, or a CEO of a message, that on Monday morning you don't have Friday on your mind.
yeah.
That line. And I said, even if you love your job, there is a lot of thought about that. And routinely he'll text me on Monday morning, I've already got Friday on my mind. So
That's what it's about, man. I mean, it really is. It's getting
yeah.
inside the human condition, and that's what he's managed to do, and
Yeah.
communicate it in a way that is exciting and fun and shareable.
Good. All right. So dermdude.com. From there, you can find Drew's social media post. You can find out more about the products. You can find out where to get the book. Uh, but before I let you go, I got to ask you the Mary question. Now, what
Ah,
was hilarious is, you know, you're you were talking right before we got you're doing this series of public relations. And so I'd gotten an email from someone from your team going, any homework he needs to do, anything? And I'm like, well, no, I think Drew's a pretty good Springsteen fan. I says, I guess the only homework is the Mary question. And if you're a fan of Drew's, and this is the first time you've heard the podcast, thank you for listening. But I end every podcast with this question. Jay Armstrong is an honors English teacher, recently retired from the Philadelphia area. And when he was teaching, he would have his high school seniors in their English class break apart the song Thunder Road. They would look at the lyrics, they would talk about the imagery Bruce is using, compare it to Robert Frost's poems and other American poets. And then at the end of the 2 days would ask the question, does Mary get in the car? Drew, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
and someone emailed me that this morning and said, hey, he's going to ask you this question, and I said, And I said, it's a no-brainer. And they emailed me back and said, we'll save it for the thing. I'm like, of course she got in the car. She was a Jersey girl, man. Like, and I don't think they cared for the answer, but my girlfriend's from New Jersey. She's like, of course she got in the car. So, she's like, was it a cute guy? It was a cute car. She's like, we're getting in the car. So I think maybe I didn't have the poetic, nostalgic take on it that maybe, professors and the literary minds might have had. But, you know, I think what's great is his songs are always open to a lot of interpretation. And look, not to open up a whole other thread, but what's great is, you mentioned Better Days and I mentioned Better Days as one of our favorite songs each. You and I can sit down and write out exactly what that song means to us, how it makes us feel, why it's special, the memories, and we're going to write two completely different things, and we're both right. And that's what's great about the music.
That is well said. That is a perfect way to end the interview. Drew, thank you so much for taking time. I appreciate the fact that you are playing hurt and you're injured. I am so glad that you came in, and thank you for putting through the technical issues we had. Once again, tell us where to find more information about you and your products.
Dermdude.com, and we got your balls, your sack, your crack, everything covered. And then my book is Under My Skin, and check it out. It's on dermdude.com as well. And let us know what you think of it. Love comments.
That sounds great. All right, listeners, go check it out. Go, looks like some interesting products. And, we all need to take care of a little bit of personal hygiene. That's a
Great
good
smelling
thing.
balls is a win-win, Jesse. It's a
There you
win-win.
go. Your significant other will appreciate it.
That's
All right, for now, listeners, take care, be kind to each other, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye. There we go. Another episode. I'm about to go through a couple of things where you can reach me and give me feedback. So if you want to skip this, I understand. But I do hope you check it out every once in a while. I'm available on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. The show is available at SetListingBruce. You can send me an email, setlistingbruce@gmail.com. You can send me a voicemail at 469-249-2442. I am currently doing a few other podcasts. Perfectly Good Podcast, John Hyatt from A to Z, where Sylvan Groth and I discuss every John Hyatt song in alphabetical order. My Babylon 5 podcast is Last Best Hope for Conversation, where Lou, Karen, and I discuss every episode of Babylon 5 in chronological order. I still am doing Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast with my brother in time, Charles Skaggs. And then finally, How Many Podcasts, the only podcast on the internet that counts, where my buddies and I discuss pop culture. You can go to our Patreon page and support the podcast for as little as $1 a month. You can go to our Facebook page, and please go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcast and leave a 5-star rating and review for all of the podcasts that I'm doing. It's okay if you don't listen to them, but if you subscribe and rate, it really will make my day better. Thank you, and I will talk to you soon.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.
And we're out. Thank you, Drew. That was a blast.
Same for me, man. Let's hook up and let's meet up for a hello in Dallas. I'd love that before the show.
Absolutely. And we'll stay in touch. Take care, brother.
For sure. All right, man.
See you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.